So to smoothly start the webinar, this is organized by FEANTSA. We're working this year on a guidance for socially fair building renovation plans, because at FEANTSA we follow the energy transition policies, and we aim to ensure that most vulnerable households can also benefit from the energy transition. And at the end of the webinar, we will share the guidance and a short checklist with all the participants. And later, the webinar will also be shared on our channels, so it can be rewatched if needed or shared with other colleagues. And for the participants, please feel free to use the chat during the webinar. And at the end, we will have a Q&A session, and then you will also have the possibility to ask your questions directly. I will not promise to facilitate the chat during the webinar because I need to concentrate on the moderation as well, but it would be nice to read your thoughts and comments even after the webinar. So feel free to use the chat as well. And we are almost at 30 participants. So I think I will start the webinar officially. So welcome again, everyone. This webinar is about socially inclusive building renovation plans, where FEANTSA will, in the name of FEANTSA, I will present our guidance and checklist for inclusive renovation plans. But before that, we will have a short message from MEP Benedetto Scuderi from the Greens. And then we will have 3 case study presentations from Hungary, Belgium, and France. And last but not least, we will hear from Nora Bernarski from DG NR Buildings Unit, working on building renovation plans and social inclusion as well. So she will share her reflections and insights on the topic. And I will then start sharing the video message of Benedetta Scuderi. Unfortunately, she couldn't join us today in person because she got a very important trialogue meeting exactly at the time of this webinar, but she was so kind to send us a video message to still have the opening words from her. So I'm going to share now with you.
Hi everyone, I'm very sorry I cannot be there with you. I have a trialogue in this exact moment, so it's practically impossible for me to be there, but I still wanted to say hi and have a contribution to this very important webinar. So when we think about a national renovation plan, we cannot just think about them as legal requirements. They are national opportunities to tackle social environmental justice in one way. When we think about renovation, we are not just thinking about make our buildings more efficiency, but we are addressing the housing crisis. We are addressing the energy transition. We are addressing the energy poverty. We are addressing having a better quality of life, because having better housing, having housing where we can afford having housing, that we can live better, having healthier housing, make our lives better, make the quality of our life better. So first of all, I would like to tackle it from the energy poverty side. In Europe, we have between 8 and 16% of the population, which is a huge number, in a situation of energy poverty. That means that there's a huge part of the population that cannot heat their homes in the winter, and they cannot freshen up their homes in the summer. That means that there's a huge part of the population that cannot live a decent life, cannot live with dignity. They cannot go home and be happy about being home, cannot work, cannot study, because the conditions they're living in are not allowing it. And this part of the population is actually increasing because of the higher cost of electricity, the lowering purchasing power, and inflation, which is making our people to be more and more into the situation of energy poverty. But when we're thinking, and this is something that the renovation is exactly tackling, because by making our houses, our buildings more efficient, we will have less energy waste, we will have more efficient housing, and we will have exactly smaller energy bills, which means we can use the energy more and better, and can have a good environment to live in. But at the same time, we cannot think that as just a transition from fossil energy to renewable energy. We need to understand that this is a technological challenge, because for the transition to be fair, even technology needs to be fair. This means to be more distributed, more democratic. This means that everyone can have access to an intelligent, flexible grid. Everyone can have access to their own renewable energy technologies like solar panels. This means that everyone can have access to a more efficient way of using energy in order to be contributing to the energy transition and the climate transition, but at the same time have the benefit of this transition. Indeed, we need to understand that buildings are not just structures. Buildings are enablers of our lives, of having a better lives. Buildings are our homes, our hospitals, our schools, our offices. Buildings is where we can live our lives. And if we don't give to the renovation plans the human side of that, we are losing the opportunity, but we're also losing the challenge. And that's why in the plans, we need to understand first what is the meanings of the buildings, how important they are, how we need to include the human side in the social justice side in our plans, which means starting renovating from the buildings of the people that are most in need. This means public housing, social housing. This means public structures like the schools, the hospitals, especially in the areas of Europe that are the most in need, and they are the most inefficient, but also addressing the people that are at the moment have no means to be able to be part of this transition, that have no means to renovate, that have no means to understand the benefit of renovation and the green transition. We cannot have a green transition if the benefits are not given to the population. There's no green transition with people left behind. There's no renovation if not starting from who's most in need. There's no innovation without social justice. This is an opportunity for social justice, but it's also a challenge to include social justice. And that's how we envision it, and that's where we want to start and where we want to end in our national renovation plans. So thank you so much, and I wish you all a good webinar, and I'm sure many interesting contributions will come out of it.
So this way, I also want to thank Benedetta for her very inspiring contribution. And I forgot to present myself at the beginning. So I'm Anna Bayomi. I'm working at FEANTSA as an energy poverty policy officer. FEANTSA is the Federation of organizations working with the homeless. We are an EU-based organizations advocating for tackling homelessness and to provide decent housing for vulnerable populations, and that's where our work on building renovations started. And I will now share my presentation on our guidance and checklist for socially fair renovation plans. Okay, I'm trying to put it on full screen. Yes, perfect. So in this guidance, we followed the outline of the National Building Renovation Plans provided in the annex of the Energy Performance of Buildings Directive, and we picked a few sections on policies and measures that are the most relevant from a social perspective and where there is the largest potential to bring the benefits to lower income households living in poorer housing conditions. And the first section is the cost-effective approaches of building renovations, which serve decision makers to select which homes they need to renovate. And we would suggest here to include health savings and social benefits as well to the calculation of these cost-effectiveness approaches, because the highest social return in building renovation is indeed lying in health savings, and as Eurofound demonstrated in their research, even if removing housing inadequacies would cost a lot as a one big investment, but removing all these inadequacies would return, the cost of it would return in just 1.5 years to the budget, to the EU budget, for example, if it would be covered from that. And also other research shows that money invested in renovation of lowest income households provide higher returns compared to money flowing to middle income and upper income groups renovations. But unfortunately, still, in too many national public support schemes, the money is arriving to middle-income families, and low-income households are hardly reached. Then in the renovation trajectories, which are a key new element of the EPBD and the minimum energy performance standards for the non-residential buildings, we emphasize the need on focusing on the worst performing homes first, and also to include measures that fix housing inadequacies and support households to reach decent housing standards, because if we don't fix before the energy efficiency measures these issues like humidity, mold, cracks, leaks, and so on, we won't be able to insulate properly. And unless there is support for these measures, households cannot afford to do them. I saw a hand raised. I don't know if it's a question or there is a technical issue. Okay, then it was a mistake. So going back, social services should also receive support next to vulnerable households, because they will face, if they use non-residential buildings, mandatory energy performance standards. And in order to meet these standards, they need to benefit from EU and national funding schemes. And among our members, homeless service providers in many countries, they are excluded from EU funding due to other requirements, and therefore they cannot improve the buildings. Then The EPBD also requires member states, as well in the main text of the legislation and the building renovation plans, to implement social safeguards, and most importantly, to prevent evictions due to rent increases. In this case, in many Central Eastern European countries, we don't have yet rent level regulation, so it needs to be introduced, and where it's already there, it needs to be adjusted to the case of energy efficient renovations to secure cost neutrality in order to avoid that rents are increased more than the actual energy savings. Then also, this is not a mandatory element of the EPBD, but legal protection of weak and informal tenures are also crucial in order to prevent that in district level renovations, the poorest households are displaced. The second important safeguard is the adequate financial support, which means 100% upfront cost subsidies for the lowest income households, and then sliding scale grants and loans following the financial capacity of households, and also no tax-based schemes or post-financing schemes to be in place, because these are highly regressive, benefiting the richest households. Also, discriminatory and complicated administrative requirements needs to be removed, because often these lead to the exclusion of households in vulnerable situation. And then the EPBD also requires the monitoring of social impact, and we believe that this should include the monitoring of displacement and the access to funding for renovations to see whether the requirement of the EPBD to reach vulnerable households in priority with finance is delivered. In the case of deep renovation, it's important to support specifically staged deep renovations, because it can allow lower income households to make the investment in different phases, so they need less upfront cost money in one go. Then on energy poverty alleviation and vulnerable customers, in order to target building renovations to the right place, is really necessary to have well-defined target populations, and this requires a proper energy poverty monitoring with multidimensional indicators that includes all fuel types, including coal and firewood, in affordability assessments, as these are the fuel of the poor. Also, reasonable cost to income thresholds need to be set for energy poverty, also looking at the remaining income after paying for energy and housing, if it's enough for covering the other basic needs. Then adding objective indicators to the EU CIRC self-reported ones, like disconnection data from energy regulators, can also improve significantly the quality of energy poverty indicators, and also aiming to map with the indicators low-income households in the least efficient buildings is the best aim to reach the households most in need. Then vulnerable consumer support is also an opportunity to use it as an eligibility criteria for renovations, but only in the case if it's simple to access and it's broad enough to include households that are most in need. Then the National Building Renovation Plan template also refers to the Energy Efficiency Directive, Article 24, which has really important points. I won't read them all up because I don't have the time for that, but it highlights really nicely the larger context of why it's important to target building renovations, because it can indeed ease the distributional impacts of energy taxation and ETS carbon pricing mechanisms. And also it highlights again that funding needs to be targeted and also along with energy efficiency measures to vulnerable households, and that if we act early with renovation, we can prevent also negative impacts for low-income households. And also it highlights the need for technical assistance to social actors in order to involve households in need. In the case of one-stop shops, we just wanted to highlight that it needs to be adapted to the needs of low-income households, not only offering financing schemes for the middle class, but also to put next to it adequate administrative and technical support with more direct engagement with households during the renovation work. And with solar programs, many vulnerable households live in homes that do not have a strong roof. Therefore, it's important to also support roof repair and electric upgrades along with solar deployment programs, and to prioritize the distribution of solar panels for disconnected households or those that are in heavy debt, utility debt, to prevent disconnections. In the case of public buildings, I just want to highlight the need again of homeless service providers that often provide their services in public buildings that are really old and haven't been renovated in decades, and they've been already hardly hit by the energy crisis with very expensive energy costs. And by supporting the renovation of these social services, we can significantly reduce the running cost of these services and improve the quality of their services. In skills gaps, there is a big opportunity to provide training for disadvantaged groups like homeless people or Roma communities to bridge the skill gaps that currently industries highlighting often in Europe. And then finally on air quality, why this is not a mandatory part of the building renovation plans, it would be really important to not only support high-tech ventilation technologies, but to address the most severe cases of indoor air pollution from mold, humidity, and solid fuel heating. And that's the conclusion. I just selected a few relevant articles from the EPBD that also highlights the need of targeted funding and support for vulnerable households. And with that, I would pass now the floor to our guests. We have three case studies, and we will start with Nicolas Bonny, Chief Operations Officer at Stop Exclusion Énergétique from France, and they do excellent work on different areas, and one of them is to provide upfront cost support, but he will tell more on this. I just need a second to share his slides.
Okay. I can share my screen if you want, but...
Yeah, no, it's already... I have. Okay. One sec.
No problem. So I'm really happy to be here and to present our NGO, or organizations, Stop Exclusion Énergétique, which is a French NGO. Oh, yes, perfect. Thank you so much. Well, so Stop Exclusion Énergétique is a French NGO. The goal of our association is to build a sustainable future by renovating homes for the most vulnerable people. We can translate our name like let's eradicate energy poverty in France by renovating homes. So you can change the slide if it's possible. I will send you an in the chat, it will be easier. So today is a really special day for French people and for me, because it's the National Day Against Energy Poverty in France. So I'm really happy to be here because it's a really special day. The subject energy poverty is quite recent subject in Europe and in France too, but we have a national day against this plague. So what is energy poverty? It's meaning that people cannot afford to properly heat their homes or pay their energy bills. They mainly live in a badly isolated houses with rising energy costs. So today, according to the last figures, 12 million people suffer from energy poverty in France. So even if we have quite low electricity prices in France, if we compare to other countries in Europe, energy poverty is a real subject too. And it's also a rising subject because more and more people are suffer from energy poverty in France. If I can share two other figures, interesting figures, 75% of households reduce their heating to avoid excessively high bills, and it's worse and worse with the energy prices in that increase. And 4 million energy inefficient. There are 4 million energy inefficient homes in France. So it's also a building topics. Maybe what we do Stop Exclusion Energetic. We are a collaborative organization dedicated to addressing energy poverty in France. Our vision is that collectively we can engage a systematic approach to transform families' daily lives in terms of housing energy. The goal is to tackle the issue at its roots by renovating homes and try to reduce energy poverty in France. We are a collective NGO with 60 members or partners from other NGO, local authorities, private organizations, big, small. The goal is to bring together all the stakeholders to work collectively and try to make the efficient renovations for the low-income families possible in France. So we have three different actions. The first action is that we support the most vulnerable household in their renovations through a program. We NGO aims to assist 2,000 households experiencing energy poverty with the renovation across 50 French territories by the end of 2026. In fact, we have a technical advisor. We have social, financial, and technical abilities, and these people will support the family during their renovations because it's really difficult for everybody to renovate your home, but it's even more difficult for the most vulnerable households. So we bring this support. The support is good things, but we have to bring also abilities. So we have like a training center. We educate and raise awareness about energy poverty and energy saving solutions everywhere in France for all stakeholders. And another subject, because it's a really good thing to have the support to renovate your home, but we have the financial topics. So we have also financing funds that we call the REMI. It's a fund to finance the renovation for the most vulnerable households. So we can change the slide. Okay. Our fund, the aims of the fund is to cover remaining upfront costs to finish home renovations for the low-income households. So in France, we have some advantages because we are some subsidies for renovation for the most destitute people. The total cost of a renovation in France, it's 66,000 euros if we want to have a really efficient renovation. If we do a good job with the local national subsidies law and some household own financial capacities, we can bring like 60,000 euros. But our fund will cover the remaining cost up to 10% of the total cost. And with this leverage effect, the families will be able to get an energy efficient home fully renovated, and hopefully family lifts out of energy poverty. So the goal of this project is to finance this remaining cost and make the renovation possible. We only do energy efficient renovation because it's really important that the family can divide it by two their energy bills. So we help the most destitute people. So we can change the slide if it's possible. So the fund's beneficiaries are the homeowners living in metropolitan France, so in Europe, committed to high performance energy innovations with professional social technical supports, with limited financial capacity, and we are facing energy poverty. So we try to bring these leverage effects to make the renovation possible. And I give you some impacts also on families, business, environment, because the renovations for the people with very low incomes is really important because we bring money to make the renovation possible, and we have an environmental impact, but also social impacts. It's more than 1,000 people lived out of energy poverty. We make business possible too, because thanks to these renovations, the construction sectors win 36 million euros. It's also local jobs, and it's also benefits for the environmental with the reductions of CO2 and also reductions of energy in general. So we have a fully impact on different topics. Thank you so much. How do you choose the specific household you are supporting? We have some, like, we are present on 15 local regions in France. So we have like collaborations with the local authorities, and thanks to these collaborations, it's possible to choose the specific households. We have also like collaborations with other NGOs, other charities. So, and we try to help the most destitute people, but it's like collaborations work. If you have other questions to this stage.
Thank you. Yes, we need to go to the next presentation, but it was really inspiring. And when I met your colleagues 2 years ago in a conference, I was really happy to hear that there is this specific program to respond to the issue of the remaining upfront costs. So thank you for all your work. And now I will give the floor to Zsuzsanna Koriter from Habitat for Humanity, and they also do something similar to bridge the upfront costs for low-income households. And I will start sharing your presentation. And Zsuzsa is working at Habitat for Humanity as a policy expert overlooking energy poverty and energy efficiency projects.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the invitation, and I'm very delighted to be here and happy to share our experience with this program. Okay. I will share today the experience and what we learned from our pilot program, which is about helping lower income houses to access existing renovation schemes. And it is a much smaller scale program than what Nicola was presenting previously, but I hope you will find it also very interesting. Just to provide, oh, it's interesting, the background is so blue. So just to provide a background and a context for my program, in Hungary, there are no specific programs addressing energy poverty and no specific renovation programs that are targeting energy renovations. They are those which are available, they are not socially targeted at all. So what Anna was also talking about in her introduction, the available support programs are usually used by higher income, middle class and upper class households. This means that support is not available for those households who need them most. And these households are mostly the low-income households in rural areas in Hungary, living in old and inefficient single-family homes with old and inefficient heating. Many of them still use firewood and individual space heating stoves, or others have these special individual space heaters using gas, which is the gas convectors. So their homes are basically the hardest to upgrade, but their energy bills take the biggest share of their income. Still, they remain almost completely excluded from national renovation programs because of a number of reasons and barriers that you see here that I listed. And I'm very sure that you're familiar with these barriers. So I will not spend time on talking about this. I will rather share the details of our program. But if you have any questions about it after, I will be more than happy to answer them. So our program, Habitat for Humanity Hungary's program, is basically a one-stop shop model, although at the beginning we didn't start it as such. We launched the program in 2021, which is still ongoing, so I can share almost 5 years experience with you. The program was initiated in partnership with the social banking branch of Commercial Bank, and it builds on an existing national support scheme for households with children living in rural settlements. The grant is a 100% non-refundable grant of about 20,000 euros for families with at least 3 children. It can be used for housing renovation. The scheme is intended for demographic and rural sustainability purposes. So this explains the criteria on having children and living in a village. But it has no energy efficiency criteria or targets. But our program, within our program, the renovations that we carry out are mostly energy related. So upgrading the heating system, insulating roofs and attic slabs, sometimes the facades, and also changing the windows. The government scheme has a post-financing model. So subsidies are only paid after the renovations were performed, which in itself excludes low-income households who can't front the costs. So now I mentioned that we didn't start our program as a one-stop shop. Our initial plan was just to set up a revolving fund with the cooperation of Erste Social Banking to pre-finance the renovations and to provide these upfront costs. And with this revolving fund, the idea was behind it that after the state grant arrives, it goes into this revolving fund, and then we could use it again for another renovation. However, it turned out during our program that these vulnerable households, low-income households, need more than just providing the money in order to be able to access the state grant. So finally, we ended up creating a one-stop shop, which now combines the revolving fund to pre-finance the renovations, and individualized administrative and social support, and an expert technical planning to ensure that renovations are made in quality and they are effective. So these three components, the money, the individualized help, and the quality of renovations, kind of form this holistic solution that directly addresses these barriers. I just like to, thanks. I just like to mention that there is this, what I'm saying is also now published in our latest annual housing report, Habitat for Humanity Hungary. Each year has a housing report about Hungarian housing situations. So one chapter is about this, and at the moment it is only available in Hungarian, and I shared the link, but it soon will be available in English as well. So if you're interested in more details, then just please reach out to me and I can share with you. Okay, so just briefly, let me briefly walk through you the process. So we have coordinators that are locally, kind of like locally embedded people who know the area, know the local circumstances, who first proactively reach out to the targeted households. We don't wait for the people to come to us and play. And this is one of our kind of like very important finding and result, that it is not enough to have just a center, or just like a website, or just like in a classical one-stop shop, just to wait for the clients and the customers to come in and ask about the possibilities. But we need to reach out to them, because these vulnerable households generally don't have the trust in the programs. They think they are not eligible for these fundings, so they don't even think about that they could be eligible for these programs, which they, in fact, they are kind of right. Without our help, they wouldn't be eligible. So after we have contacted houses, we first check the eligibility of those households with preliminary assessments, like on the phone and an online form, if it's possible, and even visit the house. And with this, we are checking if the household is eligible for the state grant. If we find that they are, then we also assist with the renovation planning, because these households, in very many cases, are not sure about what should be improved in their houses. So we have, at the beginning, we didn't have any specific contractors that we worked with, but throughout the program, we developed a stable partnership with some energy auditors and contractors, installers, and we work with them, which ensures quality renovations. Yes, next. When we planned the renovation, we assist the application for the state subsidy. We also facilitate the renovation, assist the administration, contract, the budget. We provide also technical inspection, how the renovation is going. And after that, when the renovation is ready, we submit the reports, and we wait for the state subsidy to arrive. So it is a very small program, as I told you at the beginning. We have about 10-15 completed renovations per year, but I have to tell you that it could be more, but the state subsidies criteria are so strict that about 90% of the households who are interested in our program unfortunately drop out at the early stage of the check-in with the eligibility criteria because they are not eligible for the state fund. But still, each case represents a home that would never have been renovated otherwise. So the real impact goes beyond the numbers. We think that we have shown that personal assistance can turn the exclusion into participation. We just please not, yes. We have built a network of reliable local contractors who ensure quality and transparency. And also we have done a resource assessment of our program based on the 5 years of operation and experience. And we found that the operating costs of this model, of this administrative and mentoring costs of such of our model are relatively small. They are below 10% of the renovation budget. And yet, as we see, the social and climate return is enormous. Yes, the next slide, please. So what we found is that this model has also a guarantee role to the three greatest actors in the process. So just to say it, so our program is guaranteed to the customers, to the people, to the households, because it ensures that the renovation is carried out in an appropriate quality. It remains within the cost, and their lives would improve based on the renovations. It is also a guarantee for the contractors because it guarantees the payment and they have a plannable workload and they can count that this program exists. And also to the state or the agency who provides the state subsidy and the grant, because it ensures that the actual target group is reached, the subsidy is used appropriately, and the renovation is of high quality, and that there is also transparency. So we think that our experience proves that the inclusive renovation is possible and that it is worth investing in it. So thank you very much. You can see at the last slide my email. So if you are interested in more details, just please reach out to me, and when the English version will be available, I can send it to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Zsuzsa, as well for your presentation. I think it's an excellent idea, and Robin Hood would be really proud of you making money available for low-income households. And we also have at our website, as you included in your presentation already, a short English summary, which is not as inclusive as your chapter will be, but until then you can also read that. We will share it later on. And now we go to our third presenter, Joris Pitte from Onesto, Flanders in Belgium. He's a project manager and chief operation officer as well at Onesto, and they facilitate access to first homes and renovations for low-income households in Flanders, where they already introduced energy performance standards for home buyers. And while I share the slides, I give already the floor to Joris to shortly present himself and his organization.
Okay, thanks a lot, Anna, and good afternoon to everyone. First of all, thank you to FEANTSA and Anna for having me here. It's always a nice opportunity to share our story a bit, and it was really interesting up till now. And every time I travel through Europe to give presentations on our learning lessons, it always comes to mind that in the whole of Europe, we are facing the same problems and chasing the same solutions. So it's always nice to hear from other countries and to share our knowledge, which we built so far. Especially on this topic, the National Renovation Plans. I work with Onesto for since 2020 now, And one thing that always comes to mind is that I'm missing a bit a renovation plan for the long run in each country, especially, of course, in Belgium, where I am working. So today I'm going to talk a bit about inclusive financing and bringing it into practice, and more specific, how we with Onesto try to bridge social equity and energy renovation. So you can give the next slide, please. So as Anna already said, I work for Onesto since 2020. Since 2023, I'm the COO of Onesto. I'm involved in the projects, the live projects in which we are committed. I am caring about the people and the communication within Onesto, and I like to refer to myself a bit as a professional puzzle solver, because trying to connect renovation with the financial advice always is like solving a giant puzzle of many, many pieces. So in practice, we are connecting the one-stop shop approach with the sustainable financing. Just to get to know me a bit better, I'm passionate about sports, my family, and of course, the topic of today, affordable housing. Yes, next slide, please. So who is Onesto? You probably are wondering. I saw some familiar names in the participant list, but a lot of people will not know us. We are actually a social mortgage lender, already active in Flanders since 1894. So we have built up a lot of experience, let's say. We are involved in our own ecosystem, a one-stop shop in Flanders, which is called Energiehuis Limburg. We are a member of the Energy Efficient Mortgage Initiative and the European Mortgage Federation. And for us, comfortable housing, we see it as a key in combating the structural poverty, actually. Every day we offer chances to enter the market for our specific target group, which consists of first-time buyers with limited budgets, with low incomes. And above all, it's key to keep them in the market. So we try to take care that they are able to pay their mortgage also after a few years. So prevent that they come in situation of energy poverty. We are only a small scale lender in Flanders. We serve 300 to 400 clients each year. We have about 4,000 clients in our current portfolio. Yes, next slide, Anna. I was glad I saw some pictures in the previous presentations too, because sometimes the situation in Flanders looks more or less the same regarding to the houses or typical clients buy. Those are typically houses in high renovation needs, as you can see in these pictures, which are pictures of houses we actually financed in practice. So the situation often looks problematic, and we try to prevent not renovating it because of the situation of structural poverty which people can land into. Yes, next slide, please. So we try to show with Onesto how inclusive finance can work by supporting those households with limited budgets, but we do it both during the purchase and the renovation process. Next slide, please. I told you already a bit about our roadmap since 1894, but especially the last few years are the most important ones. Since 2008, actually, we developed the first one-stop shop in Flanders. We are one of the founding members of it, and it's called the Energiehuis of Limburg, Energy House of Limburg. And after a few years, we started with our first live project, which was called the Serial Project, in which we tried to set up a structural collaboration between a lender and a renovation advisor inside the one-stop shop. it ended in 2024, and immediately we were lucky enough to be able to have a follow-up live project, Relief, in which we are now scaling the learning lessons from the serial project into the rest of Flanders by connecting ourselves as a mortgage lender, with the other one-stop shop in Flanders, of which there are 20 more or less spread across the region. Next slide, please. So indeed, the last years we developed ourselves from just a social lender to a social lender with an inclusive renovation method. Our fundament is clear, of course. We give social mortgages, especially to those people who cannot access the bank, the regular banks, who cannot apply for a mortgage with regular banks. And the last few years, our transformation went towards a real ecosystem in which we try to cooperate with all the stakeholders involved in the customer journey from the beginning, the pre-buying phase, till the end of the renovation works. We have a holistic approach developed in which we try to integrate the personal financial advice with the technical renovation advice, actually. Next slide, please. So far, I think we missed a slide. No, sorry. No. So far, we have learned from our projects, our live projects, and from the one-stop shop in which we are involved. And we think the key enablers so far are based on 3 pillars. So the social pillar, and I heard both Susanna and Nicola also talking about it. Trust is crucial. So we need a combination of independent financial and renovation advice to lower these thresholds. And we discovered that both financial support and administrative support are equally important. We can provide financing, but without helping people in the administrative burdens, we cannot make sure they can renovate their dwelling to energy efficiency. The economic and financial pillar, that are actually the social safeguards in action, namely the free advice we can offer thanks to the support of the Flemish government, who support the energy houses, the 21 stop shops in Flanders. And of course, we provide no financing for renovation without first being sure people can be socially guided in their journey. The environmental pillar, to conclude this slide, is about the inclusive housing finance. We believe it only can work when we align the social and the green goals. Yes, next slide, please. So we are in full development of our roadmap to the just transition. And today we try to scale this inclusive retrofit finance across the rest of Europe. And of course, there is an important piece of the puzzle still missing, and that's the structural finance for our clients. Because of the risk profile of our mortgage portfolio, it's very difficult to attract enough of resources each year to help more and more people get into the housing market. Next slide, please. And that's why we started in June of this year with our third live project. And this is actually our first international project in which we started to cooperate with a Spanish bank and a Spanish one-stop shop. And it's called the Leg Up project. It's about linking those energy efficient green upgrades with private investments. Next slide, please. So the consortium, as I already said, consists of UCI Bank in Spain, Fundació Europees, the Spanish one-stop shop, InnerSafe Capital from Luxembourg, and the National Technical University of Athens. Next slide. We all are aware of the critical need, of course. A lot of dwellings in Europe are not energy efficient, and typically they are often purchased also by low-income households, because that are the only ones they actually can afford today. Next slide. So within the LEGO project, we try to set up a structure of blended financing in which both the governments and from the local parts and the European divisions share their responsibility to cover and to de-risk those risk profiles to be able to attract a lot of private capital. Next slide, please. So for us too, the one-stop shop approach is crucial to connect this affordable finance with the one-stop shop advice. So we already saw a lender inside a one-stop shop is a key towards success. But in the ideal one-stop shop, the integrated home renovation services are available for first-time buyers to prevent actually the energy poverty, and for lenders and banks, the stranded assets which they risk by financing the purchase and the renovation of those dwellings. And through those ecosystems, those one-stop shops in which all stakeholders are involved, we try to make sure our product is aligned with investors' needs and the ESG criteria from the very beginning to attract more resources in the future. Next slide, please. Yeah, I talked a lot about our key enablers of success, for which the most important, and I see there is something wrong with the colors, but okay, I hope you can still read them. The one-stop shop approach, the EU Live projects, the pilots we could do every year again, the energy agencies and public authorities who provide incentives, but also the premiums and subsidies. And of course, each case is about flexible financing and about tailor-made solutions. Next slide, please. So to conclude, some suggestions from our part to go from fair plans to fair practice. Premiums and subsidies should be income-based, as in Flanders, they are developing them. The structural integration of finance and guidance, the holistic approach which we use. The governments who should take responsibility in building trust by sharing risks and providing guarantees. So we will be able to attract private capital for reaching our social goals. One personal point I think is very important is to communicate possibility, not paralysis. We have to shift the narrative from what must be done to what can be achieved, because through our journey we see a lot can be achieved. And we have to start recognizing energy poverty as a financial and a structural problem, and then we can talk about solving it. So the next slide, it's just to end. It's not just about who can pay, it's about who gets the chance to participate. So solving or preventing energy poverty is about offering chances to people to participate in the housing journey. Thank you very much. The next slide, you can see my contact information, the LinkedIn QR code, so you can reach out whenever you like.
Thank you. It was also really interesting to hear about your work, and now I will give the floor to Nora, because she will need to leave at a point and we are in a slight delay. So Nora Bednarski works at the Buildings Unit of DG ENER at the European Commission, and she works on building renovation plans. So I would give the floor to her to share her insights and thoughts on the topic that we are discussing today.
Great, thanks very much. You can hear me? Great, excellent. So thank you again for the invitation. I'm really delighted to be able to share with you some reflections on the importance of national building renovation plans in tackling the issue of energy poverty and social vulnerability, and the potential that those plans hold to do so. I'd also like to say the presentations were extremely interesting, and I think in each one there were some very key red threads that link up to fundamental principles that underpin the National Building Renovation Plans as set out in the Energy Performance of Buildings Directive. And so I would suggest that I zoom out a little bit to give the broader picture. What are the plans about, and when do they have to be delivered, and how can you contribute? How can you influence the plans so that these questions, these issues are adequately taken on board by member states in their formulation? So Joris just recalled a couple of key figures around energy inefficiency of our European building stock, and also around the number of households, around 10% of European citizens who are facing energy poverty. And the objectives behind the recast is really to rethink how we design and build and renovate our building stock to tackle multiple challenges, so climate change, energy security, but also energy poverty. And in the recast of the directive, we have essentially built on the existing long-term renovation strategies that member states have had in place for some time now, but which were not structured and defined in a very common manner. Now, the idea is that national building renovation plans are really going to be a blueprint towards the decarbonized building stock by 2050. And they will, importantly, really ensure a better coordination and planning of actions across levels, national, regional, and local. And this is important because this will facilitate coordinated investment and will also facilitate targeting of the most vulnerable and those buildings which should be prioritized, and that is worst performing buildings. So an important underlying principle in the National Building Renovation Plans is that there should be this prioritization. The plans themselves will have four main components: an overview of the current situation, a description of the status quo, the building stock today, how many persons are experiencing energy poverty, how many vulnerable households are there. Then the plans should define an ambitious set of goals which are aligned with the member states' national energy and climate plan. And this is important because member states have already made commitments to deliver in those plans, and the national building renovation plans are part of that process. And so the ambition in the national plans needs to be linked to the NECPs. But ambition is not enough. There needs to be delivery. There need to be policies and measures which are really there to roll out the change, the transformation, the energy transition, the alleviation of energy poverty, the just transition. And so in Annex 2 of the directive, there is a very detailed template to support member states in preparing their plan. And finally, these intentions are not just enough. These policies and measures need adequate resources and investments behind them, not just public, also private. And so, again, some of the presentations today were a very good example of how blending different sources of financing is critical to achieve that last mile and capture and enable the vulnerable households to really enjoy sustainable energy and affordable energy renovations, which contributes to affordable housing and a decent quality of life. So the plans will have the overview, the ambitions and targets, and I should add that energy poverty alleviation is one of the mandatory targets that should be included in these NBRPs, National Building Renovation Plans, the policies and measures, and of course, the investments. But another important aspect of the plans, which I would like to highlight today, is that the directive requires that before submitting draft plans to the European Commission, member states should ensure timely and comprehensive public consultations on those drafts. And this is really to ensure that the plans are as inclusive as possible and address the most challenging issues. And therefore, these consultations should involve a broad range of stakeholders, local and regional authorities, of course, but other socioeconomic partners, including stakeholders working with vulnerable households. And so, because the deadline for the draft plans is coming up, the end of the year, some member states have already begun the consultations or even concluded them, but others are, according to our information, currently undertaking that part of the process. And so it's extremely important to feed in the perspective of your stakeholders into that exercise in your member state. So that's one thing I wanted to emphasize. Then what happens when the drafts are submitted to the Commission? Well, the Commission must assess these plans and must assess certain aspects of the plan and can issue recommendations to member states on the drafts, which then must be taken into account in the final plans, which are due in 1 year at the end of December 2026. So what will we look at? We're going to look at the level of ambition in the plans, and that means in relation to the commitments member states have made in their national energy and climate plans. And in particular, we will look at whether the policies and measures that are included are sufficient to tackle the priorities the plans should address. And again, I would like to reiterate that from the residential point of view, tackling worst performing buildings and alleviating energy poverty is really critical. It's in Article 9, which is the article which defines minimum energy performance standards and the national trajectory for residential building stock renovation. There, member states are required to really focus on at least half of their energy performance savings on worst performing buildings. And second of all, to set clear targets for the reduction of energy poverty and to tackle that through policies and measures. So these are things that the Commission will be assessing when we receive the draft plans. The alleviation of energy poverty, the prioritization of worst performing buildings, and also we will, of course, look at the sufficiency of budgetary and administrative resources to achieve those policies and measures. So this exercise will begin in early 26, and the Commission has 6 months to deliver its recommendations on the draft plans, so they should come mid-2026. I should also add that the inclusivity of the public consultation process is also an aspect that the Commission will assess. So it is important that member states consult early, that there is transparency, access to documents, and that they actually take on board the input of the public consultation process in the formulation and elaboration of their national building renovation plans. Maybe just 2 more points, more specifically on the exchange today and the very useful and comprehensive guidance that FEANTSA has produced. This is very welcome. As you know, the Commission has prepared an annotated template which supports member states in the elaboration of their national building renovation plans. It's available online, and I can put the link in a second. But one aspect of the guidance I just wanted to comment on briefly was the question of integrating socioeconomic and health benefits into renovation strategies. So, in fact, in the FEANTSA guidance, there's a mention of the cost optimal methodology and a suggestion that including socioeconomic and health impacts is important. And of course, there's no doubt about it. When there is an inefficient home that is energy inefficient, but also there's energy poverty, and so we see phenomena such as mold and really unlivable indoor quality conditions. These are obviously issues that energy renovations tackle and eliminate, and are an important reason why, beyond reducing energy poverty and tackling housing affordability, but the quality of life and the health dimension are without a doubt there. But the cost optimality framework, for which we have guidelines, is actually designed for a very specific thing. And this is why it looks on a more macro level than on a more micro level. It's really about identifying minimum requirements for new and renovated buildings, and that's sort of the cost threshold. So it's not cost optimal methodology is not something that is used to decide whether a building is going to be captured in a National Building Renovation Plan or not. In fact, for the residential side, member states can choose which buildings to target. There is a great flexibility, but the underlying principles, as I mentioned, are those buildings which are worst performing, in other words, the lowest classes, and second of all, really supporting vulnerable households. So I just wanted to make that point. And the second point I wanted to make is the importance really in national building renovation plans to bring all stakeholders together. This was a comment one of the speakers made, and really building synergies across different policy instruments and funding instruments. So we have the Social Climate Fund, which will play a very significant role in supporting building renovation and access to affordable housing and decarbonizing heating and cooling for vulnerable households. And also in providing access to technical assistance and information around affordable and cost-effective renovations. So the Social Climate Fund is going to be one of the delivery mechanisms for national building renovation plans. But not only is that one of the synergies that needs to be reflected on, there will be local heating and cooling plans which will be rolled out. And there again, there should be synergies. And the role of local and regional authorities, again, as I mentioned, they should be consulted, but the directive is also very clear that they must be involved actively in the implementation of the recast. So that means also in the rollout of national building renovation plans. So by really trying to optimize financing sources across different instruments, national, EU funding, and by aligning different strategies with broader social and climate objectives, member states will really be able to maximize the impact of their national building renovation plans and really ensure that energy efficiency renovations contribute to a just transition, leave nobody behind, contribute to affordable housing, and deliver on multiple challenges and objectives that we're all working on. Thank you very much.
Thank you as well for your very thoughtful contribution. It covered many very important aspects that gave a good additionality to the topics that we discussed today. And today's webinar, mostly through the case, was strongly focused on the financial aspects and how to design inclusive financing schemes. But of course, the social aspects are larger in the building renovation plans, and especially thank you for bringing in the topic of inclusive and comprehensive consultations, because that is crucial, and I think it's also beneficial for the policymakers, because sometimes facing the different realities can also help to solve for problems that at the first sight are really complicated, and by bringing in the different views, they might offer a simpler way to go forward. And also in our guidance, we borrowed from an energy justice organization in the US, a really nice checklist for making consultations truly accessible by looking at what time we organize the meeting, whether we provide support, like different support for different target groups in participation, like childcare or paying for the train ticket and so on. So it's very practical, but I think it's a nice checklist to see for the planning. And I will put in the chat the link for the guidance, also for our case studies on the renovation plans, including the work of Habitat for Humanity. And via mail, we are going to share the shorter checklist for those who are too busy to read the guidance, which became a bit long. And officially, we are over of the timing of this webinar, but for those that still have time to remain, I'm interested to have a discussion. We have some questions in the chat that has been partially addressed by Zsuzsa, so thanks a lot for that. And I saw one question on monitoring displacement after renovations. That's a very crucial question, and I think we should organize the next webinar with that topic, because the answer depends very much on the context. For example, what I know that in Budapest, some sociologists monitored displacements after urban regeneration programs, which are not energy efficiency programs, but they followed social housing tenants that needed to move out because of the changing structure of the city, and I interviewed them where they managed to get an alternative flat, and this way they could manage to map where vulnerable households ended up. In case when there is no social housing involved, it's a bit more difficult to map, but in well-documented rental sectors, price increases can say a lot, and if rental contracts are officially registered, it can also give an insight whether after the renovations there were many changes in the rental contracts. There is also research from Zurich where they monitored how building on top of already existing buildings impacts displacement of households that lived before in that building. So it's a quite hard sociological research sometimes to overtake, but also being mindful when planning the relocation of tenants and working household by household. It's possible to make sure to check in with everyone if they are still there or they need to move elsewhere. I don't know if that was an answer for that question. Then there was a question to Nicola on how you choose the specific households you are supporting. And I don't know if you answered that question, but if not, the floor is yours.
Yes, I answered a part of these questions. We try to make like partnerships, local partnerships with the local authorities and other stakeholders. We have also partnerships with other NGOs, local NGOs, and we have 100 local support, financial, technical, and local support. So it's just local partnerships and collaborations.
And then there is a question to Joris on what social mortgage means in practice, lower rates.
A very good question, of course. It doesn't mean lower rates, unfortunately, but it does mean that we have easier underwriting procedures for clients. Banks, they have to follow the regulation provided by the ECB and the national banks in their local regions. But we as a lender, we are not a bank, so we don't have to follow these legislations. And we can look at each case as a unique case, actually. We can provide more flexible mortgage loans by looking at each case individually. So that's does social loaning, mortgage loan means.
Thank you. Then there were multiple questions to Zuzia, but I've seen that she did a good job by answering them already in the chat. And yes, so I would give the floor to the audience if they want to have any comments or questions in person, not only in the chat, then I'm very happy to bring the floor to them.
I apologize, I have to leave for another meeting. So thank you again for
Thank you very much. Thank
Bye.
you. Have a lovely afternoon. Bye. Okay, then if no more questions, I would thank everyone for the participations, and we will share the outcomes via email. And I wish you all a nice afternoon, and thank you for joining. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.